Hey everyone, and welcome. So, if you're into gardening at all, I'm sure you've heard this one piece of advice over and over again, especially when you're dealing with tired, kind of lifeless soil. It sounds simple, it feels right, but today we're going to dig in and find out if it actually holds up. You know the drill. Your soil is hard as a rock, your plants look sad, nothing seems to be thriving. The problem has to be a lack of worms. So the solution seems obvious, doesn't it? Go buy a bucket of earthworms, toss them in your garden, and just let them work their magic. It makes perfect sense. Or does it? Well, it's actually one of the biggest myths in the entire gardening world. Yeah, you heard me. Simply adding worms to bad soil is, well, it's like putting a five-star chef in a kitchen with absolutely no food. It's just not going to work. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why and, more importantly, what you should be doing instead. So the whole problem boils down to a really simple mix-up. It's a classic case of confusing cause and effect. We look at healthy, beautiful soil, we see it's just teeming with worms, and we assume the worms made it healthy. But the truth? It's the complete opposite. This is where we need to flip that common wisdom right on its head. The myth says that a lack of worms is what causes dead soil, but the reality is your soil doesn't have any worms because it's already dead and lifeless. The worms are a sign of a healthy ecosystem. They're not the ones who create it from scratch. They show up when the party's already in full swing. They don't get it started. Okay, so if we want to fix our soil and make it a place where worms actually want to hang out, we've got to first understand what soil really is. It's not just dirt, it's a super complex living system. In a perfect world, your garden soil is made up of these four main ingredients. About 45% of it is what we call inorganic matter. That's just the sand, silt, and clay that gives soil its basic texture. Then you've got about 25% air and 25% water, filling in all the little gaps. But the real magic, the secret sauce, that comes from the tiniest little slice of this pie. And that tiny 5% is organic matter. This stuff is the engine for the entire system. Think of it like a massive, all-you-can-eat buffet for every living thing in the soil. It's your compost, your fallen leaves, old roots from last season, basically anything that was once alive. Without this crucial 5%, all you have is a lifeless mix of rock, air, and water. And this pyramid shows you exactly why just tossing in worms is doomed to fail. See, they're way up at the top of the soil food web. The foundation, the very bottom layer, is that organic matter. That's what feeds the bacteria and the fungi. Then they get eaten by even smaller critters like protozoa and nematodes, and all of that's what the earthworms eat. You can't just plop the apex predator at the top and expect an ecosystem to appear. You have to build it from the ground up, literally. All right, so now we know how to set the table. And once you've laid out that delicious buffet of organic matter and the worms finally do arrive, wow, their work is truly incredible. They are the absolute unsung heroes of a healthy garden. Just think of them as these tiny, tireless construction workers, burrowing 24/7. Their constant digging creates this amazing, complex network of tunnels. And these channels act just like little elevator shafts, letting air and water get deep into the soil. This stops compaction and makes it super easy for plant roots to just cruise on down and find everything they need. And they're such versatile engineers. If you've got heavy clay soil, which is super dense and doesn't drain well, their tunnels open everything up. But if you've got the opposite problem, like loose, sandy soil that water just runs right through, their secretions and castings act like a natural glue, binding those sand particles together to create a better structure that actually holds on to moisture. It's just an amazing bit of soil alchemy. Now, let's talk about what comes out the other end. Worm castings, yep, worm poop, are one of the most powerful natural fertilizers on the entire planet. I mean, just look at these numbers. Compared to the soil they just ate, their castings are jam-packed with 5 times more nitrogen, 7 times more phosphorus, and 1,000 times more beneficial bacteria. They are literally turning trash into treasure for your plants. And to really get a sense of the scale of their impact, get this. In just a single, healthy acre of land, up to 10 tons of soil can pass through the bodies of earthworms every single year. That is a mind-boggling amount of soil being constantly tilled, enriched, and revitalized, all completely for free. But there is a twist in our story. While we've been singing the praises of the humble earthworm, it turns out not all worms are created equal. There's an invasive species spreading across the country that is actually really destructive to our gardens and forests. So how do you tell the difference? On the left, we've got our helpful earthworms, and on the right, the invasive Asian jumping worm. The biggest giveaway is that jumping worms have this distinct, smooth, milky white band that's totally flush with their body, and their movement is crazy. They thrash around violently, almost like a snake. Plus, their castings are dry and grainy, kind of like coffee grounds, not the rich, moist stuff we want to see. And here's what makes them so bad for our soil. Unlike our beneficial worms that burrow deep down, these jumping worms stay right up at the surface, and they just devour that protective top layer of leaf litter and organic matter at a shocking speed. They basically strip the soil bare, which depletes nutrients and leaves it exposed and vulnerable, the exact opposite of what our friendly neighborhood worms do. So, after all that, how do we actually get the good guys to show up and stick around? Well, the answer brings us right back to where we started. It was never about adding worms. It's about creating a world they want to call home. Here's the real solution, and it's just 4 simple steps. Number 1, and this won't be a surprise, add organic matter. Compost is your best friend. This is their food. Second, cover your soil with a layer of mulch, shredded leaves, wood chips, whatever. This protects them from the sun and keeps things nice and moist. Third, try to minimize heavy tilling or digging, because that just wrecks all their beautiful tunnel networks. And finally, ditch the synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, which can harm them and the entire soil food web. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The great Charles Darwin himself spent the last decades of his life completely obsessed with earthworms. His final book was dedicated entirely to them. He knew, way back then, that these humble little creatures are some of the most important architects of the world as we know it. So let's wrap this all up with 5 key things to remember. First, feed the soil, not the worms. If you build it, they will come. Second, always remember that soil is a living food web, and you've got to start building from the bottom up. Third, appreciate worms for what they are, nature's best engineers, improving soil in pretty much every way imaginable. Fourth, keep an eye out for those invasive jumping worms that can undo all that amazing work. And finally, number 5, the best way to a worm-rich garden is through gentle care, plenty of compost, a nice blanket of mulch, and less heavy digging. The next time you see an earthworm, I hope you remember you're not just looking at a worm, you're looking at a silent, tireless engine that keeps our planet healthy. So the real question isn't how do we get more of them, it's are we creating a world that's worthy of all their hard work?